In 2003, pharmacist Hon Link invented the e-cigarette. Initially hailed and marketed as a tool to assist in the cessation of conventional smoking, e-cigarettes are now a $21 billion industry. As the debate rages on about its long-term and short-term effects, vaping has become a hugely common sight as e-cigarettes use as puff clouds of mist into the air, outside and sometimes inside shopping centres, restaurants and places of business. Begging the question, is this a healthier alternative to traditional smoking or a frightening new health crisis the world over? Welcome to Synthesis TV. I'm Feldman.
This is Synthesis TV, keeping you on the edge of technology and business.
Dr. Anton Meyberg. Wow, it's been a while, hasn't it? Welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to be back. It's been a nice break.
And it's nice to see your entire face. I didn't actually remember what you looked like.
Okay, just for reference, my previous podcasts were done without a mask.
I know, but I just thought I had to say that. Here we are in the same studio.
Correct.
The world is a different place.
The world is a different place. Those unicorns are here.
There we go. We've got the unicorns. Welcome to Synthesis TV. It is absolutely wonderful not to be speaking about COVID. We're chatting today about vaping. How serious a problem is this?
So I think the biggest problem about vaping at the moment is that people don't realize how serious a problem it really is. And people often ask me, is vaping as bad as smoking cigarettes? And in a way, it's like comparing which is worse, getting hit by a car or getting hit by a motorbike. The damage done either way is immense.
Right. So it's why do you think there is this misconception or this almost notion that vaping actually isn't bad for us?
I think it's got a lot to do with the advertising. I think that you get these bright colors and you get these candy flavors, popcorn and cotton candy, and you get these cool people sort of like promoting it so it looks okay. And there's a lot of misinformation, and the biggest part of the misinformation is that the pods and the cartridges and other things don't contain nicotine, but however, more than 99% actually do contain very high concentration of nicotine, and parents and teens don't know that or appreciate that or appreciate the fact of what it does to them.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. What is an e-cigarette?
So an e-cigarette is a device that looks like a cigarette. A vape is a more sort of conformed device that can look like a USB sort of a stick, or can look
Is
like...
a vape and an e-cigarette two different things?
They're the same thing.
They're the same thing.
So
Okay,
an
cool.
e-cigarette is a first generation,
Okay.
and the actual vape itself is, you still get vape from the e-cigarette, but the actual vape, which call a Juul or a Mod or a Pod or all these different types of brands, are sort of a second, third, fourth generation spin-off from the e-cigarette. So the e-cigarette or the Juul or any of them, basically what happens is you puff on the mouthpiece. When you puff on the mouthpiece, a battery heats up liquid in a cartridge, and that forms that liquid into a vapor. So it basically atomizes the liquid and that vape, and then you inhale that vape, and that goes into your lungs.
Okay, so then you're breathing in a vaporized
So you're breathing in a vaporized substance that's heated. Okay. And then when it goes into
Does it
your
feel
lungs,
heated when you...
it doesn't feel heated, but it's warm because the battery heats it, so in order so that it can make it from the liquid into a vape. And that's the difference between smoking, where smoking is a combustible thing, where you burn the tobacco. Here it's not burnt, here it's heated. So it comes out as a vape. And you can get different types of vapes. You can get a very sort of thin vape where you actually can't even see the vape coming out, or you can get a very big cloud. And it depends on the preference of the person. And the resistance and the pressures brought out by the vapes can be immense, that you can bring out a very high pressure and a large concentration of nicotine in the amount of vape that you actually inhale. And when this heated vape goes into your respiratory lining, goes into your mouth, your nasal passages, it condenses and cools down, and then it lines your endothelial layers and lines the cells in your body, and that's where the problem
with what?
is.
So it liquefies again.
It liquefies because it cools down. Yeah, so it's heated and then it cools down. It condenses.
So then you're breathing in a vape. It goes into your lungs.
Goes into your nasal passages, into your mucosal, into your mouth, into your lungs, into your airways, all of those sort of passages.
And then it coats it with this liquid stuff.
And it's coated with liquid stuff. And I mean, you got to understand that inside the vape itself, there's not only toxic metals like lead, nickel, chromium, there's all other sort of additives in the cartridges, that these sort of flavored cartridges that they get. There's something like formaldehyde, propylene glycol, those things that embalm people. Yep. So you get propylene glycol and glycerol, which are very good in food flavorants, but they're absorbed in a different way. Here they actually get absorbed into your lungs. So you get propylene glycol, you get formaldehyde, you get acetaldehyde, you get acrolein, which is a weed killer, that gets in. And then the biggest problem we're having now is a lot of people are substituting these flavors with tetrahydrocannabinol and a vitamin E acetate.
I know that sounds scary.
And that's cannabis. So that's cannabis. And that's a very big, and a lot of people,
THC.
Yeah, a lot of people who are using this get what we call popcorn lung. And popcorn lung is when the condensed vapors go into your lungs and they cause an irreversible damage of the lung tissue, and they destroy the sacs in the lung, and you get a chronic organizing pneumonia, and it's irreversible lung damage in young people and older people.
Why haven't you told us about this before? I'm now panicking and I don't even vape.
Yep. It's very common, and the popcorn lung actually comes from people who used to work in popcorn factories where they're exposed to the flavorants from the actual popcorn.
Because they'd be breathing them in.
And they breathe them in, and they're using those same sort of catalysts and certain enzymes in these cartridges to enhance the flavors and to catalyze the whole equation.
So whether it's contains nicotine or not, it's still very dangerous, because
I think that's a misnomer, because 99% of them now do contain nicotine.
Okay.
In fact, that's how they hook people into it, because nicotine is an extremely, extremely addictive substance. And in a young person, anyone from the age of 12 to 20, the brain is the last organ that develops in the human body. So it takes about till the 20s for it to stop developing. And that's when the person's at their most risk. So
of what?
Of getting addicted because of the nicotine.
To the nicotine.
Yeah, because the nicotine enhances dopamine release in the brain, and dopamine makes a pleasurable experience. So you're happy and you want more, and it adds to the addiction, because you want to be happier and you want to feel better, so you have more and you suck more and you get a higher concentration. And they say those joules, which look like USB things, those contain 1 joule itself is equivalent to 1 packet of cigarettes. In other words, it's equivalent to 20 cigarettes, the nicotine concentration.
Does that trigger for addiction? Can it lead to other stuff? In other words, if you're a person that is vulnerable with regard to addiction, and you're a young adult, a teenager, and you smoke and you become addicted to this, is it dangerous in terms of other addictions as well?
So it definitely is. And the risk is that of the studies that have been done, and what they've seen is that over 85% of people who vape move on to actual cigarette smoking, as well as cannabis use and all other types of substances and all other types of drugs, because you've got that addictive personality from it, and you can't control it because it releases such high levels of dopamine that you actually enjoy it and you think it's good for you.
And are our kids, our teenagers, more vulnerable in terms of addiction?
Our teenagers are much more vulnerable. As you said, the brain is developing. So they get this higher release, and they've got, nicotine itself is a stimulant. So it stimulates all these functions in the brain. It pushes up your heart rate. It increases something called oxidative stress, which can give a higher risk for heart attacks and strokes. It causes tachycardia. It causes anxiety. It can cause stress. In fact, in young children, teens, adolescents, it can cause concentration lapse. It can cause mood disorders. It causes absolute problems. All that irritability. Anyway. It can cause severe ADHD.
I don't even vape, and I've got all of those things. It's true. It's true. It's like, wow, that's quite scary. But it's and in terms of older people that are using vaping to step down, to stop smoking.
That's also, look, it's an evil. It's still an evil. It's not in the guidelines of smoking cessation to use a vape to step down. And what most men don't know is that there's a much higher risk of erectile dysfunction in people who are using vapes.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that should be publicized, because no teenager wants that.
No teenager wants that. No older person wants that.
Yeah. And why would that be?
Because it lines the endothelial layers and it causes oxidative stress, and it condenses in there and causes clogging of the arteries, and it's a whole sort of host of mechanisms that lead to all of these things.
We don't yet know, because vaping hasn't... How long has vaping been around?
So 2003, vaping came
so
about.
it is a while already.
It came about in 2003, became more popular in 2010. The thing is, in about 2010, that's when the US Surgeon General already decided, hold on, there's something wrong
There's
here.
a problem here.
Now, if you're going to compare that to smoking, in the 1930s, smoking was the big fad. In fact, 4 out of 5 doctors recommended that people smoked.
Rubbish.
Yep.
Really?
But took until about 1964, 1965 for the Surgeon General to put a warning out to say that smoking is carcinogenic and it has major side effects and problems, and they need to start looking at how to ban smoking. So that was over 30 years. We're now looking at vaping, which came out in 2003. It took about 7 years for them to realize there's a problem. In fact, just recently, 2020, I think it was, the FDA came out with a ban on flavors going into the vapes, into the Juuls. And
why was that?
Because they say it promotes the youth to use it, because it makes it exciting for them and it looks very good for them. And now they want to call for an all-out ban. Last week, 23rd of June, the FDA proposed for an all-out ban on Juuls.
So, but is Juuls a brand or a type?
It's a type and a brand. So Juul is what those USB ones where you get the pod, and you get, as I say, one pod is equivalent to 20 cigarettes.
So if they ban Juuls,
then it's going to be a spin-off on all other ones.
So, but for the time being, people will still. This is in the United States.
Yeah.
How are we doing in South Africa?
Well, there's no laws in South Africa about it yet. I mean, there's no laws regarding the passive vaping, regarding smoking or vaping in enclosed areas. People think that you can vape anywhere, but
can you?
You can't, and you shouldn't be allowed to. And there's talk about the problem in South Africa is things take about 360 days for a new rule to form. I mean, vaping has definitely got secondary passive effects on people. So if you're sitting here vaping now, you're inhaling the vape and exhaling. At the same time, I'm being exposed to those toxic minerals.
I was going to ask you that. So there is passive vape smoking.
And there's other issues with vaping. I mean, you can get chemical burns, you can get explosion. The vape can explode and actually destroy your facial tissue. I mean, it can burn your lips. It can cause burning inside your body. So they've got a lot of issues related to them. And going back to the tetrahydrocannabinol, or the THC, a lot of things that we found from this, what we call e-cigarette vaping-associated lung injury, which is called EVALI, and you get an eosinophilic pneumonia, and those are very big problems.
A what pneumonia?
Eosinophilic pneumonia. Okay. So it's when you get a lot of eosinophils in the airways from the vaping, and you get a severe type of pneumonia from that. And these things are generally irreversible and cause major damage. And the tetrahydrocannabinol related issues that is because they put a vitamin C E acetate into it. So the vitamin E in it, in the flavorant, in the thing, enhances the tetrahydrocannabinol and causes more damage.
That's what I was going to ask, why they do it then, if it causes more damage. But it actually...
They don't care about the damage it causes. They just care about revenue.
What about cancers?
So all of these other things contain propylene glycol and propylene acetate, and these all deconfigure themselves into things like propylene oxide, and they're extremely carcinogenic. So they definitely are cancer causing. And then, as we said, for the toxic minerals, the lead, the chromium, the nickel all goes inside. All these things have got carcinogenic effects. It's now too early to understand what the effects will be, but in a number of years, we're going to see side effects from these things, and we're going to see that these things are going to be noticed as carcinogenic, just like smoking was.
So are you completely exasperated when you see that teenagers as young as 13, 14 are going to parties, smoking the stuff, parents aren't stopping it, schools are starting to deal with it, but maybe not necessarily enough? It must be immensely frustrating as a medical professional, as a pulmonologist in the space, seeing what's happening.
It is. What people don't realize is vaping is the new epidemic of teens and of our youth. And as we say, every teen or youth that does vape lands up going on to smoking and doing other types of drugs or other type of illicit substances. And it's a big problem. And what's happening in the schools is the kids are going into bathrooms and vaping, and they're using odorless vapes. So it's impossible to tell. Impossible to tell. And these things need to be tackled by the schools. The schools have to tackle them head on, and parents need to actually take some accountability. Parents need to realize how dangerous these things are. They are not good for your kids. They are not good for you. They are not a substitute for smoking. They are extremely dangerous.
Well, I was going to say, it's not that they're not good for you. They are potentially really problematic.
Harmful. Yeah.
Very
as
harmful.
I said, as I used the analogy of the motorbike and the car, do you really want your child to get knocked over by a motorbike?
The problem as well is you can't detect it through smell. I mean, when a kid starts smoking cigarettes,
you can
parents
detect
generally can tell if they want to. They're very small.
But it's also very difficult, as you said, to ascertain if your kid is vaping, because with teenagers and their mood changes and their irritability,
impossible to know.
Every parent's now going to think their child's vaping because they're all irritable.
Absolutely. So how do you tell? What should parents be doing?
If children become more secretive and they try and hide things and they become more cagey, it's already a sign.
Almost like you would about drugs.
With drugs, yeah. It is a drug. At the end of the day, it's a drug.
Should parents be looking through their teenage stuff?
That's a whole different ethical discussion, but my thought is yes. You need to curb this. You need to stop this before it gets to be a big problem. Yes,
and schools need to come down, I would imagine, very hard. That if a kid is caught vaping or
they need to be suspended or they need to be
absolutely
punished accordingly.
The other problem is, how are teenagers, 13 and 14-year-olds, accessing vapes?
So they get their friends to buy it for them. They get their 17, 18-year-old friends to go to the vape stores. They're all in all of the malls and that. As I said, they're green, bright coloured. They look amazing. They've got young people sitting there vaping and giving them out to them and saying this is great. And they don't realise it's a drug. It's expensive. It's habit forming. It's got serious side effects and it can damage the lungs irreversibly, and as well as many of the neurological effects of it. As we said, mood disorders, concentration, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It changes cognitive thinking and it changes cognitive abilities, and we don't know down the line what it's going to do to your actual cognition.
If a kid is vaping on a regular basis, how difficult is it to stop? In other words, should parents be having the conversation to say, that's it, we're taking it all away? Or is it like stopping cigarette smoking that actually has already become an addiction that's quite
Well, it is an addiction.
challenging?
It's exactly the same as smoking cigarettes because of the nicotine content, because they're addicted to nicotine in those developing brains. And that stimulant, as I said, releases that dopamine and makes them much more addicted. So it's very difficult to stop it, but you have to go cold turkey.
Is it cold turkey? Is
Cold
that
turkey,
what
that's
you'd
the only way.
recommend?
The only way to do it is cold turkey. You don't introduce more drugs to stop them from using drugs. Go cold turkey.
Is that the parent in you or is that the doctor in you?
So the parent in me is saying you don't have to introduce more drugs, and the doctor in me is saying definitely don't introduce more drugs.
Okay, fine. No, because it is because as parents we all have this issue.
Yeah.
We all and none of us think that our kids vape, right?
Yeah.
It's not our kids. It's their friends who are vaping.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
It's never our kids. Is it a subversive thing? In other words, when we were at school, the kids who were smoking when they were young were really the rotten kids to some extent. They were hiding behind sheds, and they were the kids that were going to get into trouble.
It's not that.
Is it those kids today,
No,
or is it
no.
the good kids as well?
The good kids and the bad kids and all the kids, because there's no notion of how bad it is for you, and there's no notion that it's a bad thing and what it does to you. And that's where the education comes in. And that's where you've got to show the kids and the parents how bad vaping is for you, to say that it is a bad thing and you shouldn't be doing it because it's quite cool. Now your friend comes along and says, well, just try it once. It's quite nice. You'll have a nice little hit from it. You'll feel good afterwards. So it's not a bad thing. And a lot of people are walking around vaping all the time in open areas, and people are doing it in front of other people. So if they're allowed to do it, why can't we as kids do it? I mean, it's not harmful, but yet it is. It's extremely, extremely harmful.
And it's interesting because there's something that almost there should be a zero tolerance for them.
The zero tolerance.
It's not like
it's as bad as smoking.
Right. In terms of the stats, what's it looking like in the United States or here?
So the United States has got the highest growth of vaping in the schools and the adolescents all over the world. There's an epidemic. And the stats are dramatic, and that's why the FDA are coming down now and banning jewels and trying to ban the flavors and trying to ban all these things to show that it's not good for you. It's got serious ramifications, serious side effects. And we saw, though, with the dreaded COVID, that actually the numbers of vaping came down because the kids were at home and they couldn't get access to these things. And now that everyone's going back to school and going out again, the numbers are starting to rise again.
What about the fact that parents are saying, well, the kids have been cooped up and they're going to parties and we can't curtail them to the same extent that we once did?
Yeah, I don't think that holds much water. I mean, you've got to understand that as a parent, you've got to have some responsibility. You can't be your child's friend. You've actually got to be their parent.
In terms of some of the studies, and I saw a Gallup poll that said, okay, 1 in 5 Americans under the age of 30 is vaping, even occasionally, and vaping much less common amongst the 30s and older. So are over 30s smoking less here in South Africa.
Yes, so we saw a major shift against smoking, and our government came out with a ban against smoking in restaurants and in public areas, and that made a big difference. And people have been well educated against the vices of smoking and the effects of smoking and how bad it is for you. And we need to take that and actually sort of extrapolate that and bring it towards vaping to show people how bad it is. Because we're not seeing, how frequently do you go out and you see a 35-year-old, 40-year-old having a cigarette? It's not frequent.
No, you don't.
It's not the common thing. But now you'll see all these people vaping because they think it's okay and it's cool.
And it doesn't smell. It doesn't feel feel
and you
dirty.
can get certain smell ones, and you can get ones with big vape clouds and small vape clouds. Depends what you want. People have vaping cloud sort of competitions to see who can blow the biggest cloud, and that's cool.
But I've seen these tiny little ones, and you see bigger vapes. What is the difference?
So it's a different type of pod or a mod. You get an Arcos, you get a Juul. An Arcos is a heated tobacco product. Still contains all the nicotine, and it's just a different type of mechanism to deliver the vape into your system. So a lot of the kids use the Juuls more often because if they've got a USB flash drive, they can say to their teachers, "Well, this is just a flash disc. It's not a vape. It's easier to hide it." Yeah.
And much harder to find.
Yeah.
It's really, really... What about the tar? There's no tar, is that
So
right?
there's no tar in it, but there are other carcinogens.
Right.
Yeah.
And you don't get... So it's, in other words, the damage that you see in the lungs is different to cigarette damage.
Well, we don't know that. You see, it's too early to tell because you've got more than 80, 90 years of history and sort of reports and things to compare it to, whereas here you've only got a few years of x-rays and scans of people who've gotten sick from it. And it takes time for these things to actually
But it's
come
not
out.
likely we'll see, for example, the emphysemas from this.
Why not?
I don't know.
We don't know. It's too early to tell. What it does do is it does exacerbate coughing and sputum production and
so
asthma.
it does.
And does that.
Okay.
And if you don't treat asthma properly, asthma itself can remodel into an emphysema type picture. So it's a possibility.
Oh, so it is a possibility.
Yeah.
So what is your message to people who vape and to parents who might or might not know if their kids are vaping?
I think to parents, read up about it, become educated about it, understand what you're dealing with and understand how dangerous it is. It's not a joke and it's not a social thing that your kids should be doing. You shouldn't be allowing your kids to vape, even less you shouldn't be allowing kids to smoke. And with regards to kids, this is not a popular thing. This is a thing that's going to damage your lungs, it's going to get you addicted, and it's going to make you shift onto other drugs and other substances and going to cause trouble down the line. And all you need to do is speak to people who've actually vaped and realize how addicted they've become and they can't stop vaping to understand how bad it really is for you.
Dr. Anton Meyberg, passionate about this subject. If you want more information, comment below, like, share, and don't forget to subscribe to Synthesis TV. I'm Howard Feldman, chatting today to Dr. Anton Meyberg, pulmonologist, around the dangers of vaping. Have a great day.